Uh, I want to talk a little bit about the learning aspect of human-centric leadership. So, if we're thinking that this is a culture change that we really want to roll out in our organization, there's always, I'm a big, you know, cheerleader for continuous learning, okay, and improvement, self-improvement. So how would you go about, or what would be some ideas that you can share with me, not only about the importance of continuous learning in becoming a human centric, but what would be some strategies that maybe an organization could implement from the learning perspective, from the training perspective?
Yeah. So, the importance of learning here in this type of model is really that, continuously learning, and I agree, it's like we should always be learning.
Mhm.
Things keep changing, right?
Mhm.
So the
Right.
world changes very quickly, right?
Right.
If you don't stop, it's just going to go right by you,
That's
right?
right. That's
Um,
right.
so so the more you kind of keep learning, you really kind of, again, it's building these muscles about being resilient, being adaptable, being flexible, so that you can adapt to anything, new market trends, skills you might need, new technologies.
Mhm.
And so having that as part of a regular cadence kind of just helps kind of with all these shifts and shakes. A lot of what we've been talking about too is around this idea of innovation. So
Okay.
there's changes and stuff that happen to us, but then
Mhm.
there's changes that you can actually drive,
Right.
right?
Right.
Either on your team or even broader in the organization. So learning often can promote that as well. Either how to think about things differently, or as you go through things, you lift things up and you take them in, or see how they can apply,
Mhm.
to your team or organization or whatever that you're
Mhm.
working on.
Mhm.
Um, to actually, and this is a difference between traditional and human-centric models, kind of going
Okay.
back to one of our initial questions, like
Right.
traditional leadership would not really focus on development at all. It's kind of like, again, kind of at the task, and that's
Right.
it. If you did get training, it was usually, related to the tasks you
Yes.
did, very, very specific.
Right.
Um, so when, it comes to in a human-centric, part of it is so the type of training that you would want to be doing can be around some of these skills, these skills that we've been talking about. So, active listening
Mhm.
and empathy, it can seem easy, but they're not,
Yeah.
right? And so,
Right.
and sometimes it's not just, learning about what the skill means, but then practicing, coming back, kind of having some checkpoints and accountability partners on those pieces.
Mhm.
But that's definitely skills that you want to kind of focus in on in this type of style and culture that you're trying to embed. Um, and that's, and the idea of collaboration. So that's
Okay.
another piece, which social, emotional intelligence and empathy and active listening are all part of really doing a good collaboration model. So
Mhm.
let's figure out a solution where we both are coming up with what's the best,
Mhm.
knowing how to ask the questions, knowing how to listen to people's concerns, meeting figuring out somewhere how we can manage both of them, but you use a lot of these skills in order to collaborate, which goes to,
Mhm.
this idea of, hey, being more inclusive. Can we come up with new ideas? How are we going to meet business? As opposed to one person just telling me what to do. Let's figure out how to do it together. But
Mhm.
it's a lot of these soft skills that if organizations can focus on, can actually kind of start moving the needle for leaders.
Mhm. Okay. Teresa, can you share a story of a leader or an organization that exemplifies human-centric leadership, and what lessons can we learn from that story about a successful human-centric leader?
Yeah. Um, I've had the pleasure of working with a couple different leaders who truly embrace this. I mean, that you just really knew that they were, so authentic, and they had it was kind of like they had your best interest at heart.
Mhm.
You could be yourself in many ways without fear of repercussion. Um, you could talk to them about, ideas and concerns, and they just had this, I don't know, this air of positivity
Mhm.
in the organization at the same time, and leverage that to have a positive impact, like to get results. And I mean, some in particular, it's like you just they made so many different so many efforts to attend things outside, your events and so on. When you talk to them, again, they were undivided attention, always looking at the bright side almost on things.
Mhm.
You just felt so connected, and like you wanted to do your best,
For them.
you know,
Mhm.
for them. They were just some really great leaders. Um, and the reality is, eh, knowing that that was they had to make tough decisions
Mhm.
too,
Right,
right?
right.
And you would see it when, one or two did have to make some and tough decisions. And when how they made it and how they communicated it out, you knew, like, it almost as if you felt like you knew it pained them to make those decisions,
Right,
uh,
right.
but they were just, just great, great leaders. And the reality is knowing that they're human too, right? Like
Mhm.
with it.
Right. Mhm.
So they have, and the higher up you go, the statement is leaders cast long shadows. So the higher up you go, um, they're always being watched, and they're always having to role model. And
Mhm.
and my thought is, gosh, I hope they have someone they can talk to and be
Yes.
vulnerable, in a different way,
Right.
vulnerable in a different
Mhm.
way, to get their needs met. But even though with that, and they're human and they can make mistakes, and when they did, you kind of gave them grace because of all the equity that they had built up.
Mhm.
But it kind of, again, it made them real. So
Okay.
as opposed to some people who make mistakes and there's no equity, and then you start wondering if some of um the humanness
Mhm.
was not real for them.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
there are leaders that you can look back and say, oh, it was not truly who they were. And these are skills that they were just trying to use to as much as they could, but you didn't know how much they embraced them truly, versus a couple people where it's like, no, this is just it's almost part of their makeup. And I don't want to say that and say that doesn't mean you can't learn the skills,
Right. Okay.
so you can learn the skills. And
Okay.
when you really do embrace them and learn them, that's the impression, that it just seems like it's part of who you are.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk a little more about the learning piece of it because I'm thinking, you know, if some leaders, it's just a natural, like you say, it's just kind of ingrained in their DNA or their personality.
Mhm.
But then we have others that just have no clue, or they have come through their career with another type of traditional, more leadership.
Yeah.
And if an organization is moving more to the human centric, uh, though and we don't want them to be left behind.
Right.
We want them to also embrace and move and grow in that direction.
Hmm.
So if we were thinking of a leadership development program, let's say, to help these leaders
Hmm.
um, not only understand the concept and embrace the concept, but be able to put it into play or apply that concept, what would be some maybe just general topics that maybe a program should consider having in that training?
Yeah. So a lot of times, a development program should start with some sort of mechanism to increase or provide self-awareness. So
Okay.
understanding your strengths and your weaknesses in some manner. And there's based on this topic, there's a couple of different ways. So there's actually, collecting 360s, either through electronic or through interviews, emotional intelligence questionnaires as well, because that's going to be a key component of
Mhm.
the things we're talking about.
Mhm.
So that's one thing that I would recommend starting a program with,
Okay.
so that again, you kind of start, creating this awareness and things that they do well. And sometimes it's possible they might have overused strengths
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
might take away from these very
Right.
topics,
Right.
and things where there might be opportunities. And then you can start building on from there. So some of it can also, with that, just you're more similar than you realize. And I think
Mhm.
that's can be the scary part, is like when you think that, oh my gosh, I'm the only one, or I don't, and so on. So creating some sort of um, situation where people are sharing these topics and
Mhm.
information, or and so you can see that there's they're not alone, and you're all going to work on it together, basically,
Mhm.
in some ways. And you're going to leverage the people who might have some different strengths than you,
Right.
right? So understanding that.
Mhm.
And then the topics can be some of the things that we've been talking about. So, really focusing on what emotional intelligence is, all the different facets. There's actually a lot of different pieces to it. And so you can start uncovering and unpacking that. What are some of the things around listening, around empathy? Again, start building some skills that
Mhm.
often are related to all these topics that we're talking about. And then focusing on collaboration as an end game for it, and different collaboration approaches, how to influence people. That's
Mhm.
another piece that can also come into play, because that's where sometimes all this inclusivity and and intelligence and listening can kind of go out the window.
Mhm.
Those things working together, the influencing with the collaboration to actually get things to a good point where you're moving things forward in a manner that is, suitable, or a lot of people can buy into. Those are a number of topics that I see that
Mhm.
can be part of it.
Okay.
Also there are very specific um, say courses, workshops on DE&I. And that's
Okay.
another piece too that we can talk about, is or just what you can throw in or be part of the program around aggressions, microaggressions, macroaggressions. People don't always, there's awareness, and there's people don't always aren't aware, like some things that they say are verbs, or kind of like sayings they have or whatever can actually be offensive, or just things of,
Like a
and
little
that's
sting.
another piece
Right.
that can be part of a program.
Right. Yeah, because that kind of rolls up into the self-awareness piece, all of this about personal growth and the self-awareness.
Yeah.
And in effective, I wanted to throw this out to you and ask, in being in effective leadership, how big, broad, does the role of self-awareness play? I mean, this is from a general scale of being a leader, personal growth, professional growth. How does that self-awareness role really play into being effective?
Yeah. Um, I would say, I don't have any hard data, but I would say
Mhm.
the best leaders are those that are self-aware, and
Mhm.
they create that by intentional actions. They
Mhm.
they truly do. So they reflect. They think about, a lot of times they'll have set times for it, right?
Mhm.
When you were driving to the office or back
Mhm.
home, I
Right.
knew leaders that would always use that time for it. They'd go through their day, kind of Rolodex through it, meeting by meeting, what worked well, what didn't work well, what could I have done differently.
Mhm.
Um, Doing it right after meetings, like especially when you're in a team environment or we're partnering with someone.
Mhm.
But reflecting
Mhm.
is has a lot to do that with creating self-awareness.
Okay.
Some journal. Some actually like to do it as opposed to just kind of doing it through their mind. They actually will take, pen to paper and think about the day and different things and their role in it. But a lot of it requires this work to create that self-awareness. And again, then there's, like we were talking about with programs,
Mhm.
sometimes tools. If you go through coaching, that's another
Right.
thing.
Mhm.
Coaching starts off with tools and feedback. And for some, it's sometimes it's the first time they've ever really gotten that much
Right.
feedback
Right.
um,
Right.
at any given time. But the leaders who truly know thyself, I
Mhm.
find just they can adapt more. They know when they've stepped in it, like they know, right?
Right.
And they know it quickly, and you can recover from those
From
things,
that. Yes.
right? When you do it quickly and you're authentic and transparent and just say, yeah, like I
Yeah.
own it, and you move forward. And
Right.
so they are there's so much value in being a leader like that. And again, I just think people really, that's what people want.
Want.
They want to know that you're human and you're just like us, and you make mistakes and you care, right? That's the other
Yeah.
thing. Like
Right.
being human means that you value that connection.
Right. And you care, and it's okay, to say, I am just like you. We all make the mistakes. We all thrive in certain, and strengths and that forth. But I think that for me, what I've seen is the really good leaders that I know are very human.
Mhm.
All right. And authentic and honest, and um, are able to, from the honest of saying, yeah, it happened. We're going to correct it. We're going to go in this direction and own it. I think it's a
Right,
question of owning the good, and also owning, when times are hard or things don't go as right, or we, slip.
right.
But being able to own ownership, that's what I kind of put human centric together. Is it has a lot to do also with a leader in ownership, owning
Absolutely.
that. Yeah,
Yes.
and people will follow, because they can relate
Hmm.
you to say, well, this person, if I cut myself and they cut themselves too, we're both going to bleed red. So
That's
that's
right.
just the way, so hey, they're just like me, and sometimes we'll have empathy from the standpoint of, they have a lot to carry. And so I really want to support them, because I
Yeah.
know they have a lot to carry, and I want to make sure that I can help them, because that helps me get to where we want to go
Yep.
as a organization. I think that works well in a team, in sports, a team sports, all of that. It's still all the same thing. We
Absolutely.
all got a goal that we want to get to.
Yes.
Yep. I want to talk a little bit about the future.
Okay.
And thinking, I know this concept, it's not new. It's, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because it may have a new name. The human centric may be a little bit of a new name. And I wanted to talk a little bit about trends, because I know that this model kind of pulls from formal traditional models.
Yeah.
And I wanted to discuss with you trends, because um, I've seen in the past where models become flavor of the day.
Right.
So, you know what I'm saying? And so for human centric, what trends do, I want to talk a little bit that can shape the future of this kind of leadership, so it doesn't become the flavor of the day, oh, everybody jumps on this bandwagon, for a few years, and then it just kind of dies out, and we go back to maybe one of the, patriarchal or traditional models. So
Yeah.
what do you see as trends that we can shape the future of this type of leadership?
Yeah. I mean, I agree to your point. It's not necessarily new and different. And uh, you, s- I almost see things kind of like continually ramping up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, um, and at the same time, market conditions can alter it, but it's always there in the background. And so, and what I mean by that is that, people, again, I just go back to the last 4 or 5 years where this idea of, hey, my well-being, who
Mhm,
I am, having some sort of balance,
mhm,
feeling valued, feel like I'm not just a cog in the wheel.
mhm.
That's all it's gotten more and more play for individuals, and that and it's going down generations, right? So now
Yes.
we have generations who are really, really feeling this and seeing it, and you have those of us who are in older generations
Mhm.
where, again, I go back to the 4 or 5 years, people who were used to more traditional models,
Right.
we're okay with it, and because of so many things that happen, are rethinking things.
Mhm.
Um, I have, more than one person who basically, because of your workloads, not, stress, just it didn't seem to matter and anything, they just up and retired. Like they were just like, a good like 8 years before they expected to, because I'm done.
Mhm.
So you have these things happening where people can actually do that and walk away.
Right.
The other thing that's coming into play, and that's why I said I think this will always be in the background. Like I think when push comes to shove, a lot, you know, that people want to feel, again, they want to feel good about where they're working. It's not just about the money anymore. It's
Right.
it's
Mhm.
not. Um, and even in times, and right now we're in a very tough hiring market. So organizations have gotten away from some of this people focus. There are some organizations that have,
Mhm.
and they are really pushing people, again, maybe not being flexible, driving things, being
Mhm.
less human centric. And when I talk to those individuals, what I hear from them is, it's a job.
Mm. Mm.
I'm glad I have a job because
Right.
of the market. If I had a different job, I'd leave.
Yeah.
I mean, and so you think about it from an organization perspective, and like, if that's the attitude and
Mhm.
that's the level of engagement that you have, do you really think you're getting all that you can
Right.
from somebody? So the answer would be no.
No. Mm-mm.
And what happens when the market changes? Because
Right.
it will change,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so organizations that are losing sight of this, because again, they're under their own
Mhm.
stressors.
Right.
So if they're under stressors to meet, stock prices or other things of that, or EBITDA or whatever for
Mhm.
themselves,
Mhm.
they tend to get away from the people focus.
Exactly.
It will all come back. It will all, you, what is it, you'll lay in the bed that you dug, or lie in the
Yeah.
hole that you
Yeah.
dug for yourself. So,
Yeah.
so that's you just know it when you go through history. But this idea of the people focus is I think it's just getting more and more play, and it's embraced more by people in other generations. And so I see it kind of continuing, whether an organization embraces or not, they're going to take it into consideration, employees.
Right. So as the new leaders are coming through and building their careers, you're seeing where they are going to carry this torch, um, the human-centric strategies or model, um, and embed it more as they grow into their leadership roles.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you'd like to think that, because
Mhm.
it's always, when I get asked, well, what kind of, what kind of leader do you like, Teresa? Like, well, how, how can I lead you? How can I manage you? I think about how I treat others. So
Huh?
you hope that as leaders do rise the ranks, they keep that in mind,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
That, oh, I want to be treated in a certain way. This is how I like being treated. This is how I should be as a leader. And if I'm
Right.
not, then what's causing that?
Right, right, exactly. Yeah. So they keep that honesty, that, vulnerability, that authenticity, because that's what they would want someone to do to them. And so
Correct.
they carry that, those kind of traits,
Yes.
as they grow into their leadership. I wanted to touch a little bit on technology,
Yeah.
okay, and how technology advancements, um, from a human-centric lens, is going to influence leadership practices.
Yeah. So, we've seen some of this again because it keeps changing and getting better and so on is just around all the remote work tools.
Right,
Right? So when we
right,
started a few years ago, we had Zoom and maybe
right.
Teams, and that was it. And you see all these now different things, right? And
Uh-huh.
different ways to leverage it. And so that's just gonna in collaboration tools and how you can Slack, all these other ways, like to kind
Mhm.
of keep people involved and how you can work better remotely,
Right.
as a team. So we're going to kind of keep going and kind of keep adapting, with that. Um, you know, the it'll be interesting. We've been talking a lot about training, right?
Mhm. Right.
And maybe like communication. And so this idea of like virtual reality
Mhm.
or augmented reality, all the kids are playing it and
Uh-huh.
all their games, but I kind of wonder like, oh, are we gonna see this is part of training,
Right.
you know
Okay.
what I mean?
Yep,
Like,
yep,
where
yep.
then you're in real
Right.
situations and interacting in that way.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's kind of like it's a way to have like breakouts in a different manner, I think about with remote training possibly. So I wonder how that's gonna just add to the training part that we've been talking about with these concepts.
Mhm.
Uh, and the biggest technology train or concept that we've been talking about probably for and there's still a lot to learn is all on this AI,
Yes,
right?
right.
So you know AI is not going to replace people. So let's just make sure
Right.
like people understand that. It's
Mm.
a tool. It's
Right.
a tool for it. And it that almost means then like I think about with the human centric side is like um being able, because it can bring up diverse perspectives and stuff. It's knowing how then to add the human element to the information that you get, or so it doesn't sound
Mhm.
right that
Right.
it just came from a computer pulling it all together. There's got to be this layering to make it resonate
Neat.
with people. So whatever you're using AI for, I'm thinking about like creating things, but how do you have it have a voice? How do you make it connect to individuals, whatever you're leveraging it with?
Right. And that's where the human piece of it comes in. And I kind of like that idea of maybe technology influencing leadership practices, like with the avatar and situational
Hmm.
things that a leader would be put into and have to solve, or what I mean, go through in order to, and I think that mind getting them through, I'm kind of thinking science fiction kind of thing.
Yeah.
They really have to go through, I won't say an obstacle course, but the course, sort of like an obstacle course of running into these different situations with their avatar, and how do they come out at the end,
Right.
kind of thing. But
Yeah.
it's still, even in building something like that, you're still going to have to put that, AI can't do it all. You're still going to have to put
Right.
that human, layer on top of it in order for it to work,
Right.
because we're dealing with human beings. We're not dealing with machines. So
Right,
yeah,
exactly. And
yeah,
would a machine actually know how to grade a response?
right,
Right. Yeah, like would they understand like my response, how did that really would that really make someone feel?
right, exactly, exactly. Well, Teresa, that is kind of all of the that I had today in regards to our discussion today. Is there anything else that you can think of that you want to talk or speak to when it comes to human-centric leadership?
I think
Any last thoughts?
I would say we all know it when we see it and feel
Mm.
it,
Okay,
right?
true.
I think that's the thing. And when something's not feeling great, I just sit back and think about why. Like if you're not feeling particularly about your employment or your situation or the interaction that you're having with
Mhm.
somebody,
Mhm.
really sit back and think about it. And it often will come to these kind of concepts,
Right.
right? I'm not feeling heard. I'm feeling told to do things, not feeling connected.
Mhm.
And then, think about what, the causes are and what you might be able to do about it.
Mhm.
And and it can be challenging because if you're not feeling connected to a leader, can you really share how you're feeling? So it's kind of when it's not there, and it's hard to figure out how to fix it,
That's it. Right.
right?
Mhm.
But I just know, again, speaking from experience, is like when you have the trust and respect
Mhm.
and you feel that human side from a leader, you're willing to move mountains.
You're right. You're right. You're willing to go the course. You
Yeah.
are willing really to go on the course. Well, Theresa, thank you so much again. It was a pleasure having you with me today. And I look forward to us doing some more discussions.
All right. Thank you. It was great being here.